What's going on, OP? It's week 7. It's First Multiplication week, and so with that, I want to talk to you guys how we be praying in our rooms tonight and even throughout the week concerning this topic. And so it's going to be pretty short, pretty simple, but we read in 2 Timothy 2:2-4, and then give you guys 3 ways how we be praying. So let's go ahead and get into it. Starting in verse 2, it says, "And what you have heard from me in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to faithful men who will be able to teach others also, sharing suffering as a good soldier of Christ Jesus. No soldier gets entangled in civilian pursuits, since his aim is to please the one who enlisted him." So thinking about verse 2, that we are to entrust our lives to faithful men and women, and they are to entrust their lives to other faithful men and women. And so seeing that, we are called to die to ourselves and invest into these young believers, these new believers, people that are faithful and wanting to know more about Jesus Christ and Him crucified. And so for a minute, I want you guys to think about, where would you guys be today without these faithful men and women in your lives? Where would you be at without them? I want that to sink in. I want that to compel you guys so that you can just see God's grace and that you can go, therefore, and make disciples. And so even looking at verse 3, it says, "Sharing suffering as a good soldier of Christ Jesus." Just knowing that Jesus Christ suffered for our sake, died the worst death that anyone could die, and that we are now eternally rich because He became eternally poor. Just knowing that Jesus is so worthy of suffering for. And even looking in John 12:24-25, that unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. So just dying to ourselves and knowing that what we're doing now is going to have eternal worth. And when we look back in heaven, we're going to see all these faithful men and women that God has placed in our lives, and that we have stewarded well by God's grace and by being dependent on the Lord. And so looking even in verse 4, it says, "No soldier gets entangled in civilian pursuits, since his aim is to please the one who enlisted him." So we need to focus on how we can not lose sight of our ultimate goal, which is Jesus Christ, which is to glorify God and to make Him known, and continue to grow in a relationship with Him. And so let us not get distracted by the world or even spiritual things that can prohibit us from making disciples and from other people knowing and hearing the gospel. And so just to summarize, 3 ways we be praying. 1, that God would entrust us with 2 to 3 or even 1 faithful men or women just to invest our lives to. And then 2, to trust the Lord. 1 Corinthians 3:6, Paul says, I planted, Apollos watered, but only God gave the growth. So just knowing that for God, to be dependent on God to give the growth when we have these men and women that come into our lives. And so also the last one, the third one, is for us just to not get entangled into the civilian pursuits that Paul has been talking about, to not get ingrained and be transformed by the world, but to see the light, to see the ultimate goal, and to push towards that goal. So I hope that makes sense. Well, it wasn't too complicated. If not, God's good. But hope this was helpful for you guys. Hope you guys understood it well. So have a good one, guys.